Paris. The air was thick with the scent of freshly baked bread and the hum of the city's pulse. It was 1892 and the Bohemian quarters were alive with color. Artists, poets, philosophers and dreamers scattered throughout the narrow streets, creating worlds on canvas and in words. I, Matthias, was one of those dreamers struggling to make a name for myself in the world of literature. My words were often lost in the sea of paper I'd scribbled on, nothing more than echoes in the vast expanse of this city of artists. But then he appeared. Etienne, the painter. Before I continue with the rest of the story, kindly do me a little favor. Please hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to comment your favorite part of the story below. Now back to the gist about Etienne. I first saw him in a small cafe, his face hidden under the brim of his hat, his fingers stained with vibrant colors that seemed to reflect a world I had yet to discover. He was a mystery to me, his presence almost ethereal, like he belonged to a time long past. The way he carried himself, the way his eyes flickered beneath the shadows, it was as if he knew something the rest of us didn't. I found myself drawn to him, unable to resist. I couldn't look away even when I tried. He must have noticed my gaze, for he turned and met my eyes, and in that instant, something shifted. I don't know what it was, but I knew with a certainty that made my heart race, that my life had just changed forever. A few weeks later, I received a letter from him, inviting me to sit for him, to pose for a painting. The idea seemed ludicrous at first. I was no model, no muse, no work of art. But there was something about his words, something about the way he seemed to see me, that made me say yes without hesitation. I arrived at his studio on a cold morning, my breath clouding in front of me as I walked the cobblestone streets. The building was old, its exterior cracked and worn, much like its occupant. But inside it was a different world, dim yet warm, with paintings in various stages of completion hanging from the walls. The scent of oil paints and turpentine filled the air, mingling with the quiet hum of the city outside. Etienne stood in the middle of the room, his hands covered in paint, a contemplative look on his face as he observed me. His gaze was piercing, as though he could see into my very soul. I couldn't bring myself to look away, my body frozen as if caught in a trance. "You're here," he said softly, his voice like velvet. "Good. We can begin." I sat down on the stool he'd set up for me, trying to calm my nerves. My heart was pounding in my chest, my breath shallow as he prepared his canvas and brushes. I wasn't sure how to act. How was one supposed to sit still for a stranger who wanted to capture them, to immortalize them in paint? His eyes never left me, and I found myself trembling, but not out of fear. There was a strange pull in the air between us, a connection I couldn't explain. "Relax," he murmured, almost to himself. "Let me see you." And I did. Slowly, hesitantly, I let go of my reservations, my thoughts drifting away as I allowed myself to be seen. His gaze, warm and intense, swept over me, studying the lines of my body, the curve of my jaw, the way the light hit my skin. Time passed, but it felt as though the world had stopped moving. There was only him. And me. And the paintbrush that danced across the canvas. Over the next few weeks, I found myself returning to Etienne's studio more frequently. It started with the usual sessions, me posing as he worked tirelessly on his paintings. But something was changing between us, something that neither of us had spoken about, but it was growing undeniable. Each time I stepped into the studio, I could feel it in the air, an electricity that crackled silently in the space between us. A tension that had nothing to do with art, but with something far more primal, more raw. At first I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was just a model, a muse for his work, and that I should focus on that alone. But the moments between brush strokes, the pauses where we would look at each other, lingered longer than they should have. His eyes would follow me not just as a subject to paint but as something more, a person, a man. And I couldn't deny the way I felt under that gaze. But it wasn't just the act of posing that drew me to him. It was his presence, the way he seemed to breathe the same air as me, the way he made every movement feel deliberate and meaningful. It wasn't just his artistry, it was him, the man, the mystery. He was gentle and commanding at the same time, and I found myself drawn to him like a moth to a flame, even though I knew I was standing dangerously close to being burned. One evening, as the golden light from the setting sun streamed through the large windows, casting long shadows across the studio floor, Etienne asked me to remove my shirt. The request seemed innocent, or at least it did at first, but as soon as he spoke, I noticed a subtle shift in his voice, a roughness that wasn't there before, as though the words had been dragged from him unwillingly. The tension between us thickened, palpable and heavy, as if the very air itself held its breath. "I need to see you fully," he said, his voice low, almost hushed. It wasn't just the statement, it was the way he said it, carefully, as if testing the boundaries of something fragile between us. His gaze flickered over me, then back to his canvas, as though trying to concentrate on the task at hand, but his hands were shaking slightly. I felt a flutter in my chest, my heart suddenly racing, but I nodded in quiet compliance, unable to speak. My hands trembled as I removed my shirt, exposing the bare skin that had been hidden under the fabric for so long. The cool air of the studio brushed against my chest, and I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. But then Etienne's gaze softened. I expected to see judgment, the cold detachment of an artist observing a body. But what I saw instead was something warmer, more appreciative, a hunger that wasn't just for my form but for me. His brush moved with careful precision, each stroke of paint on the canvas making my chest tighten in a strange, unfamiliar way. His focus was intense, his eyes darting between the canvas and me as though every detail mattered. But it wasn't just the painting that captivated me. It was the way his gaze never wavered from me, the way his eyes traced the lines of my body, lingering on every curve as though memorizing me. I could feel the weight of his attention pressing down on me, making me feel exposed in ways that had nothing to do with my bare skin. It was my soul that felt naked. And then it happened. Without warning, he placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch gentle yet firm, as if grounding me in the moment. His fingers lingered longer than necessary, just a moment, but in that span of time, the world outside of us faded away. My breath caught in my throat and I froze, unable to move. A spark shot through my body, electric, almost painful, and I felt a wave of heat rush over me. His hand remained on my skin, the warmth of it seeping into me, and for a long, long moment, neither of us moved. We were suspended in a space where time seemed to slow, where every second stretched into eternity, and all I could hear was the rush of my own heartbeat drumming louder in my ears. His gaze never left mine, and I saw something in those dark eyes, a question, a desire, something that pulled me in deeper, drowning me in its intensity. "Etienne," I whispered, my voice shaking, the word coming out barely more than a breath. He didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything, everything that had been left unsaid between us. In that gaze, I saw the answer to every question I hadn't dared to ask. We were standing on the edge of something dangerous, something reckless, and neither of us had the strength to pull away. It was inevitable. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. In that moment, I knew that whatever happened next, whatever path we decided to take, I would never be the same. There was no going back from this. The world outside of that studio, the reality we had both been pretending to live in, faded away. It was just us. And that was all that mattered. It was a late evening when it happened. One of those nights where the air is thick with anticipation, where the world outside fades away, leaving only the two of us in the quiet of his studio. I had been posing for hours, the weight of his gaze making my skin burn, when suddenly, he set his brush down and stepped closer to me. His proximity made my heart race, my palms sweating. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, only feel. Without saying a word, he reached up and brushed a strand of hair from my face, his fingers brushing against my cheek. The touch was soft, but there was something in it that made my body ache for more. I looked at him, searching his eyes for some sign that this was real, that he wanted the same thing I did. His face was inches from mine, his breath warm against my lips. "Matthias," he breathed, his voice thick with desire. "I can't keep pretending this isn't what I want." And then, before I could answer, he kissed me. It was a kiss that shattered everything I had known, a kiss that was both tender and fierce, like a storm breaking against the shore. His lips were soft, yet demanding, as if he were trying to pour all his longing into me. I kissed him back with the same intensity, my hands grabbing at his shirt, pulling him closer. In that moment, nothing else existed. Not the world outside, not the risks we were taking. Only him. Only us. The next few days were a whirlwind. We couldn't stop seeing each other, couldn't stop touching, kissing, feeling. Our connection deepened, and I knew with a terrifying certainty that I had fallen in love with him. But love wasn't enough, not in a world that would never accept us. Our love was forbidden, taboo. The risk of discovery loomed over us like a dark cloud, threatening to shatter everything we had built. One evening, as we sat together in his studio, the air between us heavy with unspoken words, Etienne spoke the words I had been avoiding. "We can't keep doing this," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "It's too dangerous. If anyone finds out, we'll lose everything. My career. Your reputation. Everything." I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but I knew he was right. We were living on borrowed time. But the thought of losing him, of walking away from everything we had, was unbearable. "I don't care about any of that," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I just want to be with you." Etienne's eyes softened, and he reached out, taking my hand in his. "We have to decide, Matthias. Is this worth everything? Is this worth risking everything we have?" I looked at him, searching his face for the answers I needed. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't live without him. I couldn't walk away from the only love I had ever known. "We'll face it together," I said, my voice steady, despite the fear that gripped my heart. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." And with that, we made our decision. We would love each other, no matter the consequences.